Okay, we are live.
Welcome everybody at SEOnerd Switzerland. First of all, can you just write us something in the chat to tell us if you can hear me well, if you can see us well, if you feel well, just say whatever you want so we know you are there and that everything is fine. And before we can start saying anything like very important. So I don't see the chat, so Sarah, you need to check.
Okay, I'm checking the chat. Yes, obviously I see. Hi, yeah, we are here, etc., etc. So they can hear us, so it's
Okay,
fine.
that's perfect.
That's good news.
I'm sharing my screen, so I don't see the chat.
Yeah, I forgot.
But as long as you can hear me, then I'm happy. Then it's good. So as you know, this is a webinar, so we are going to wait maybe another minute, but not really more because it's not like in presence person where we wait 15 minutes, at least le quart d'heure vaudois in our region. But I mean, 1 minute is still a nice thing to do, right? Okay, so maybe first thing, can you tell us what do you do? Like what kind of background you have? It's more marketing, it's more technical, it's specialist SEO. It's just to give us an overview of who we are talking to, and it helps us sort of adapt our language if needs be, or, you know, or maybe ask more questions for you, or just, you know, to have us an idea. Sarah, do you see anyone?
Not at all. I see that you're like, everybody like is there and they really want to say what's their background apparently. So you can do it. You can give us the background. No?
So you are what?
I know
SEO
people.
specialists, marketing consultants. Are you working for a newspaper? I would love to have lots of people working for a newspaper.
What does SEO mean?
What does SEO mean? Okay, then.
Cheeky guy, yeah? Okay.
We have digital strategists. Awesome. You are the right place, my friend. Okay, so
Okay, so
we are
maybe
waiting for the few others to come. Let me just introduce you the association if you're here for the first time. So SEOnerd Switzerland is a non-profit association. We organize the meetup, sometimes in person, but mostly at the moment as they are webinars, which is pretty cool because webinars, we get to meet more people sort of internationally, and we get to have great speakers that don't live in the same city. And so what else? Oh, yeah. And for the little story, Sarah and I used to work together. And we had fun working together, so we decided to have a side project together, and this is pretty much how SEOnerd started. And also we wanted to speak to other people doing the same job, so this is a really good opportunity to meet people.
Yeah.
And so before we start with today's talk, I would like to tell you about next month's talk. So this is another great speaker. You have to come and see her. Rachel Costello is like, she has done loads of public speaking. She is published in the Search Engine Journal, and she will help you prepare for Google's page experience update. So this is going to be a tad bit technical, but very fun. So save the date. It's Thursday, 19/11. So yes, November. So you have no excuse not to come. This is not the Christmas rush yet. So, and now I will just let Sarah introduce today's talk.
Yeah, before that, if you want to sign up and you still didn't, you can check in the chat and I send you the link to the event. I particularly like Rachel, so voila, voila, voila. So coming back to today's talk, first of all, thank you so much, Tobias, for coming. It's so cool to have you here. Iselin and I are super happy. And for those that still doesn't know Tobias, let me introduce you to him. So Tobias is SEO specialist, is head of SEO. I can do it. Is head of SEO at Blick. And is also SEO trainer at the Zurich University for Applied Science. So if ever you study IT, go there. Go and visit Tobias and his training. For those that doesn't know it, if you follow Tobias on LinkedIn, then you will be aware he clearly have a strong technical background. He works for Blick, so he understands the needs of publishing company and how to apply SEO and how to apply SEO principle, obviously, in that case. So Tobias and his team are responsible for the strategy, the technical SEO. He told me also once that he had somebody doing SEO data, and the collaboration between SEO specialists and journalists for Blick. So I think that I said everything, Tobias. There is something else that you want to add? No? It looks fine. Okay. So, okay, if you have any question, voila, you can ask them. And here is how we will organize today's talk. If this is the first time that you join us, I will explain for people that it's the first time they join. So we will have Tobias talk. You can ask question. We have if you check, you can you have a Q&A and you can write your question. And at the end of the presentation, we will select some question, or Tobias too, he can select some question, or all the question if we get the time, and he will answer to your question. So if everything is good, let's start. Okay, Tobias.
Okay, so let me unshare my screen. And so for the story, we met Tobias when we were at the Google Webmaster Conference, and we were very impressed with this talk. And so we have a renewed version today. That looks wonderful.
Yeah. So you can all see my screen. Yeah, let's start. This is an extended version actually of the Google talk I had. There's multiple versions, and let's start with this one. And I was already introduced, so we can instantly start, I guess. News SEO. I will start with the two main fields we want to rank in. And it's not like the blue links. We want to rank mainly in these top stories, news boxes, carousels. And these are special places in Google where you can rank, yeah, just as a publisher here. And you are really limited in the time you are able to rank here. It's not like you can rank here forever, but you need to have news. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is now becoming more and more interesting for us, is Google Discover. And Google Discover, Google mentioned it's 800 million monthly active users. And I can tell you these numbers, they show for, I don't know, at least a year. So I guess it's in reality much higher. And that's a really interesting topic for us, because that's basically the recommendation engine which is showing people in Google news and other posts. And when Google first reported the numbers of Google Discover, this was last year, I think, we saw that for us as a publisher, that's a really high share. Like a lot of clicks are coming, and also impressions are coming through Discover. So that's a really important field for us. And I think for many other publishers, it's the same. The higher your Android share is, the higher will be Discover, I guess. So that's the situation. If you deal with news SEO, you see it's a different field than normal SEO. I also want to mention here aggregators, and aggregators is something like Google News and also something like Update or Xiao, and these are really big for publishers, and they basically work like with SEO methods, I would say. So you need to be indexable and stuff like that, and it needs to be crawled by all these aggregators. And we also see some, especially in Switzerland, some correlation between Google Discover and Apple News Widget. Apple News Widget is if you have an iOS device and scroll to the left, then you get these news recommendations. And there is some correlation, but the thing with Apple News, it's really hard to track. It's in Google Analytics, it's direct. And so I want to show you a little setup here, how you can get an idea about at least the differences in numbers here. So it's not like an accurate number, but if you set up in Google Analytics a filter and say, yeah, I want iOS, I want Safari, the landing page is always an article. So there's never an entry on the homepage coming from Apple News Widget. The source is direct, and if you have a mobile site and an AMP page, then it's usually going to the mobile site. And this is a setup which can help you to kind of estimate if there's a growth in Apple News. And it's not accurate, but I think it's you cannot get much better because Apple is not having a proper referrer here. Yeah. Then the topic links, I get some messages in LinkedIn. Usually they want to send me links and I'm not interested, just to mention that here, because SEO link building might work and outreach is important, but if you have a legacy and a really old news brand and you have a lot of good content, then you have good links because of good content, and it's also growing naturally. Because if we have, for example, a story first, then usually other publishers with high trust link to our page. And so we don't really care about links, which is really a cool part of the job here. The second thing is content. If you're working in an agency and you have to tell your clients like, hey, come on, could you please write something? And they say, oh, no, we are busy. Then this topic is also not a topic for us as news SEOs, because we have 100+ journalists which produce really good content, and content is the core product. So that's really a good situation. But yeah, it's about, because we are competing with other publishers, it's about being faster, having a faster production here, having content at the right time, having more SEO relevant content. And so you see that, you will see, I will show later some examples here, that content for a publishing website is completely different than running like a business blog or something like that. And it's much more about the speed and the timing and these things. So in our case at Blick, we work in a process which looks like this. So we as an SEO team, we do research and we try to find in data some topics and some ideas which are trending in search. And I will show examples later how we do that. Then we give it to the journalists because they are the expert in producing content. And usually, because there is much more journalists than SEO experts, we have this problem with that we need to be live as soon as possible. The articles get published in our case, and we try to re-optimize afterwards. Sometimes during the production process, but usually because it's time-critical stuff, it gets published as soon as possible. So with this, we also have a big job with educating and training people and training journalists. And I will go with an example of NZZ, how this could fail. And I think every SEO who understands German will get the point here instantly. So all these headlines are writing about unicorns, and that's a weird thing, I think. Actually, unicorn, that's a term for a startup, a successful startup, if you're writing about economy news. But of course, there's a problem if you have such a title in the search results. And yeah, you can, if you want to watch, like NZZ is doing that a lot. That's really funny. You can grab it, whatever you want here, but you see that there's some need to train people. And so, for example, just training people about titles, we train them, of course, to have like the location, organization, and people in the title, and we train them that they should put the title first and also what many publishers do is they have a separated headline and title tag, because if you do a print newspaper, then you want to enable the journalists to be free with whatever title they want, like even with unicorns and stuff like that. But then they should have another title for the title tag for like third-party distribution and to show it in search engines in a way that people understand what to expect if they click on the link. So NZZ is doing that actually. So you see here the unicorn headline, and you see below the title tag in Google search with mentioning the startup, in this case Stripe, which is like best practice here. And yeah, at Blick it also happens. You need to train people. At Blick it happens, for example, sometimes that you go for something like Coronaldo, and I was like, who's Coronaldo? And of course it's Cristiano Ronaldo having Corona, but you know, like you need to train people and actually we train the people to get the first version better so that we don't have to optimize so much. And also we know that the first version is super important for Google to be ranked in a proper way. Yeah, so the next thing, if you are working in publishing, you struggle with like, especially if you have a legacy, a print legacy, then you struggle with this print and forget versus the internet. And if you're thinking about the legacy lifecycle of an article, it's like you write the article, then you publish it, it's printed on paper, you cannot change it anymore, and so you have to forget about it, so you cannot change it anymore. It's printed on paper and you cannot change, but the whole situation is different if you are now in a world where I think we have 600,000 articles on blick.ch, and every article is accessible through Google in theory. And then you end up in the situation that you wrote 2 articles in this example about what's allowed at the German border in terms of Corona rules. And if the second article is published, the first one is outdated. So if a user is coming to the first one at the date of the second one, then he gets wrong information. The user gets wrong information, and that's really critical for us to clean up here and to have a redirect or to like do a recycling with the article or something like that. And this is also a big job usually with news SEOs. So we try to extend this life cycle to have it like do a recycling, extend the article, maybe not write a new article about the Corona rules, but keep an old one always up to date, because that's it's a little bit of cleanup work for the platform, so that every user, even the users coming through search, get a proper information and a proper site. Yeah. Okay, let's switch the topic here a little bit and switch into technical SEO. And I want to show you some special things for news SEOs, so what we do, and also want to show you some more detailed things which I think many publishers struggle with. And the first thing I want to show you is this way to support bots. And for SEO, it's really important that the website is crawlable, of course. You all know that. So you do something like proper linking, you have section pages, you have tag pages to get the bot kind of easily moving through the site and stuff like that. And one thing you can do as publishing websites is you could have a news XML sitemap with special tags to inform Google that you have a new article and you have this image for this article and this publication date. And this is special for news. It's also limited to you just can have in this sitemap articles, I think, younger than 48 hours. It's also limited to, I think, 1,000 articles. So that's a special sitemap, and that's what you can do with in publishing SEO. In addition, you always want to extend your site with structured data. And one thing here is the news article markup. There's many special markups you can also do with video and stuff like that as a publisher. But news articles may be the most special markup for publishers, with also something like author and date, publishing date, modification date. And this markup helps also to get into the top carousel and so on. There's also an option with this markup that you could decide which images are shown in Google aggregators. So like something like Discover. So you can give an array with multiple images, like in specific sizes, and then Google will select the image and show it in Discover, for example. Or this is, I think, a new tab in Chrome where also news are shown below. And yeah, that's really powerful. If you do the images, then you can manage that and you can influence that. But if you don't, then yeah, Google will select whatever is there for them, which is risky in some cases. Okay, so the next topic is AMP. AMP is a web component framework and website publishing technology. And AMP, the main thing with AMP is it's fast, I would say, because it has limited JavaScript and CSS. And actually, the big benefit of being fast is it's pre-cached coming from Google. So Google is basically loading the site, and then it's, of course, super fast. It also has some blockers for bad practices in terms of speed and UX. So you cannot do, I think, render blocking ads. So it's always content first, and ads are lazy loaded or later loaded. And it also helps you with avoiding layout shifts. So it's a powerful technology to achieve good Web Vitals scores, actually, if you're speaking like that now. And if you never saw these, if you are in Google search on a mobile device, you see this little icon, and this is the signal that this is an AMP article. And if you click on those, it's pre-cached from Google, as mentioned. It's obviously then super fast. Currently, if you want to be in the top stories, you need to have AMP, so top stories on a mobile device. But in next year, there will be changes, and that's really interesting changes. I think that's a new slide, actually. Google is, next year, they take the page experience metrics to be the ranking criteria to be in the top stories. So you need to have a fast site and not blocking and good UX to be in that carousel and in the top stories. And they will remove AMP as a requirement next year, which may change the whole thing with AMP. But we will speak about Web Vitals in a minute. I first want to show you this one, and this is from the AMP team, actually, so it's kind of biased, but anyway. What you can see here is if you build an AMP HTML website, it's really hard to get it slow. So it's always like super small, pre-cached from Google, having some best practice implemented. And if you have a normal mobile site, like if you don't care about speed and good UX, then you are this average mobile site. And so the decision is basically, do you want to build AMP in addition to the mobile site, or do you want to really hand tune your mobile average site to be competitive with AMP? And yeah, so that's the discussion publishers will have, I think, next year. At least if you start from zero. If you are starting from zero as a publisher, you will have this discussion, like, do I want to hand tune my site, or do I want to go AMP as a second version of every article? Will be really interesting next year. Okay, so let's switch to this Web Vitals topic, which is a big topic and for publishers. And I want to show you first some things how you could avoid layout shifts. And I show you here, this is actually not the case anymore for Blick, we have solved that. But what you can see here is that the headline is jumping. So first it jumps because there is some space made for an ad. And then it jumps because here's some space made for, or here the video drops in. So this also jumping because of that. And so the headline is super unstable and the site feels like jumping, and which is not nice for the reader to read like that. And in addition, if you have buttons in there, it can also be like misleading, and if the user is clicking during the loading process on some area which jumps shortly before, it's, you know, that's this is CLS score. You should check that out in any case, but for publishers, you see with ads and with all these elements, it's a big topic. What you can do here, I will show you one example. This is super sorry for being having so many pixels here, but I don't know where I downloaded that. What you can see here, this is the old version, and you see here the title, the headline, and it's jumping because of the video. And in the solution down here, what we did is we have a placeholder in the size of the video, which is coming later, which we load initially. And so the whole thing stays stable, and you see the headline here is not jumping. And this is a good solution because then the site is much more stable and not jumpy, and it will help you to get a better CLS score. You can do a lot with placeholders actually to improve that score. Also for ads, which we are working on currently. The second thing is speed with Web Vitals, and I will go with an example. Many publishers have that problem that you have a lot of ads because you're monetized by ads, and you have a lot of JavaScript because you have some fancy, I don't know, storytelling tools with graphs and stuff like that, which are loaded with iframes and a lot of JavaScript. And you can end up in the situation where you load all of this stuff because the ad guys, they want to be tracked first. That's of course, because that's how they make money. You can end up in the situation that you load a lot of stuff before the first real image is loaded in this waterfall graph. And if you have such a situation, then your largest contentful paint scores will not be that good. And if you're talking with, like, if you run a small website, then usually people tell you, hey, yeah, compress your images and stuff like that. But I think many publishers that's not a solution for many publishers, because if you haven't compressed your images as a publisher, then you also spend a lot of money for all the volume you're shifting through the network, through your CDN. So probably these easy things are solved for most publishers, and you need to solve more advanced things to improve the largest contentful paint and similar scores. And I want to show you one example here with a big CSS file. And let's imagine this big CSS file is render blocking, and you load this big file, And your setup could look like this. So there is a home page and a section page and an article page, and all of these pages load the same big JavaScript file and the same CSS file. And just a little part of this JavaScript and this CSS is needed really for all the pages, for example, for the framing. This means that whatever URL you're loading, all the CSS and all the JavaScript is loaded. And this is a problem because, of course, on the home page, you don't want to load the CSS and the JavaScript, which is needed for comments, because comments are on article pages really below the fold, somewhere down there. So this is really low prio to load the CSS of the comments. But with this setup, that's a problem. And yeah, you can solve that, for example, with something called CSS in JavaScript or JSS. And I want to explain a little bit how that works. The idea is to have, in an extreme example, like in this demo page I built, you have 0 CSS. So there's no CSS file anymore. But how do you do that? And the idea here is, or how that works is, you use something, this is a React application, and you use style components, which is a library to do CSS in JavaScript. And what you do here, this is a component, a React component, which is generating this line here with this beautiful yellow background. And here is some JavaScript calculating how many stars you get here. And here you see this is background color yellow, that's CSS. And it's bundled with the JavaScript. So it's one file, one component. And what happens if you then load something like that, you see that there is a JavaScript file loaded. And in the JavaScript file, there's somewhere hidden this CSS. And this is super powerful with because you just have to load the JavaScript. And JavaScript, I found this, JavaScript has much more options to load async and defer and to manage the priority of what you load. If you compare that with CSS and you check out this recommendation, which is like if you Google like CSS async or so, then this is one of the first recommendations, and it's a good one. But it's basically saying this CSS is a print CSS, and then it's switching it on load. It's switching to this is a CSS for all. So it's a hack in the end if you do something like this, and with JavaScript you have much more options to manage the load prio here. So load prio management, like with the same example, what you can do here in addition is to come back to just loading the comments if the comments CSS is needed. What you can see here is I'm on the home page. Now I click on an article and now the JavaScript is loaded. So on the home page, there's nothing loaded which is not needed on the home page. And that helps a lot to not just for the home page, but also for the article page, or in this case, the event page, to reduce the amount of JavaScript and CSS loaded. So the setup looks like this as an example. So the comment JavaScript and the comment CSS is just loaded on article. But for example, the weather widget JavaScript, which is on every page in the top corner, is loaded for all of those. And if you apply a logic like this, then you reduce the amount of JavaScript and CSS per page, and then it's getting faster actually. In addition, if you have solved that and you split it everything nice and everything is like into components, then you want to apply some load prio probably to all these things. And that's a really good article by Eddie Osmani. He's working for the Chrome team, and he's explaining that, for example, An ad framework would be would have a defer if you load it, and it's a really good document telling about how you can prioritize the JavaScript files in the load order. And then probably you come up with something like this. Okay, the comment JavaScript is just loaded on article, and it gets script defer at the end of the body because it's not so high in prio, and then the things which are important and which make the site load fast in a higher prio here. Actually, that's a lot of work, and if you run a WordPress site which is like click together, it's really hard to apply something like that. I saw almost impossible. So with modern JavaScript frameworks, you can do that, and I would definitely recommend to do that because this makes the site super fast if you apply that stuff. Okay. The last thing here with tag, I think, is web stories. These were AMP stories before. It's a topic for news SEO, again, a pure topic for news SEO, I think. And what AMP stories or web stories now do is actually that's visual storytelling. So you can create something like this on here from BBC. And it's a nice way to explain, to do a story, probably a more evergreen-like story. And the difference compared to an Instagram story is that it's HTML and HTML based. So it's not a video or something like that or images. It's a real XML markup thing. And the next difference is that you don't upload those to Google or to Facebook or something like that, but you own it. So it's it's like a website, but it generates something which is, I think, a really nice way to do visual storytelling. Why is this an SEO topic? Actually, in Switzerland, it's not yet an SEO topic, but if you are in the US, in Brazil, or in India, then these web stories are in a premium position in Google Discover. And I mentioned before, Google Discover is in our case 40% of the organic traffic. And if you end up in such a situation that Google Discover is opened and the web stories are in the top position, then you want to have web stories. So I'm pretty sure that's something you have to be aware of as a publishing SEO also in Europe, because it could happen that they switch it on here and then it's instantly an SEO topic for us. Anyway, you could spend time and check out if this way of visual storytelling is something you like. I think it's cool. Much more cooler than doing video editing or image editing to do the same. Okay. Cool. So last chapter. So last chapter is data, and I just want to show you. This is like describing the relationship between organic traffic and direct traffic for us as publishing SEOs. And I want to show you two user flows. And the first user flow is like someone is searching for Federer, you get these results, it's an AMP page, you click on the result and you are on the article and you read the article, and probably after that you bounce. Because if you're looking for Federer, you're not gonna read, I don't know, an article about whatever. So you're driven by the topic. So that's the traditional SEO traffic. Compared to that, if you have a loyal reader who has installed the app, then the user flow is app, you go to the homepage of the app and you go to the article. And what many of those users do who are super loyal to a brand is they do homepage, article, homepage, article, homepage, article, and at some point they bounce. And if you have that situation combined with a strong brand, then you have a lot of people entering on home. And if you then place something in the top position on home, you will have amazing CTRs coming from home to the article. And this changes, this is really something you need to be aware of in Google Analytics, because this, you could easily end up with something like an article has 70+% of the page views with a previous page path of home. And if you then just check those numbers, where's the traffic coming from, and you as an SEO are in here, then you have a really hard time to argue how important then are you, and how important are you to drive traffic and stuff like that. But you need, the important thing here is you need to understand this, this boost of a strong brand and a homepage with high CTRs to the article positioned on the top position. And we are working on that. This is an old screen view, screenshot, and we are working on understanding this better. This is an example which shows us if the positioning on the homepage is underperforming for its position, or if we should change something here. So that's something you could optimize. In the meantime, we are optimizing these things like with an algorithm. So we started with, so every user, that's the goal, gets a homepage which is optimized for the user to improve the CTRs to the article. It's really important also for news SEOs to understand this mechanism of a strong homepage as a publisher. Okay. Now I want to switch to tracking of rankings, which is also special for us, because if we check our shorthand keywords, something like, I don't know, Iran, football, Donald Trump, and so on, not those, actually, these are the ones who are the same here, I see. But you see here down there, there's some Apple iPhone 11, it's an old screenshot. This Apple iPhone 11 wasn't there before. So shorthand keywords, they change all the time for us. So most of the keywords haven't been trending a month before. And this is really hard for us to track. If we want to track rankings with traditional tools, it's really hard. So you need to watch out for useful data if you want to track rankings in publishing SEO. If you have something like Systrix, Searchmetrics, and those tools, they have a general stable keyword set. Basically, it's really, I would say it's really stable. It's a big keyword set, but it's not a news keyword set. So, so it's really hard to track with something like that rankings. There are special tools like something like News Dashboard. They track a special news keyword set, which is changing all the time, like every 15 minutes actually. They have really short cycles with changing the keyword set they track. And I also like Google Search Console here, because they have all the long tail, and the problem here is you need a ranking, but at least this is like on pretty accurate in terms of what's currently ranking. In addition, you need to think about the freshness and frequency of data if you do news SEO, because also here, if you go with Systrix Searchmetrics and check the visibility scores, they are updated, I think, every 7 days, once a week. And yeah, that's a one-time shot of where you have been, and that's not enough for news SEO, because we have this high frequency. And so a news dashboard helps us here with checking every 15 minutes. A Google Search Console gets more and more useful. When I presented this the first time, it was, I think, a 3-day delay. And now it's, I see sometimes 5 hours. So the more Google Search Console is getting close to real time, the better. But one of the best sources is something which is really real time. So Google Analytics 360 with real time is really good. Chartbeat, Parsley are special tools for publishers, which help not to track rankings, but they help to track the landing pages in real time. And that's in many cases more valuable than checking once a week, do we rank for Donald Trump or not? So that's really a different situation compared to an e-commerce. So. Okay, so next one is about finding topics. And I want to show you here an example where we get topic ideas from for our input I mentioned before. So we check, for example, real-time trends in Google Trends, and then we see some ideas, and we try to match that with the situation for us as a publishers. Could we cover that? Is it useful? Does a journalist have the room to do that? And that's one source. Like we trend Google Trends. Actually, the coolest situation if your brand is being a Google trend, that's today. That's a real-time thing here. There's also, this is from News Dashboard. They help you with, they show you missing topics. So these are topics which other publishers made news rankings with, but we haven't covered them, or we don't rank with them. So this is a special tool for that. That's for the news part. And also for seasonal topics, we try to work with Google Trends. And an example here is, if you check that, so climate change was a topic like for years, I think, and then Fridays for Future were upcoming, and Greta, and of course big trends, and you as a journalist think, hey, that's a super cool topic, we need to write about it, and of course that's in the news, that's really big. But if you compare that to Mother's Day, like good, so it's really, Mother's Day is like huge compared to whatever news topic is happening. So if you're just looking for covering the biggest trend here, then it's for sure Mother's Day is a really good one. If you make it to have something useful and to get a news box for Mother's Day, it's a safe bet actually. It's happening every year, and yeah. What we also did, this is a prototype we once built, and this prototype is basically taking some data from Google Trends, Google Search Console, and other sources, and trying to predict what's an upcoming topic at a week. So what I'm doing here is I type in the week, and then it tells me ticks, like these little blood-sucking animals, are a topic in week 20, because it was like that in the last 5 years, and it's probably a topic again this week 20 this year. And you can combine it with multiple other data sources. So in this case, we try to recommend an article for recycling. If no journalist is able to write something, we could go with this one and try to refresh it a little bit. And because it's not so much changing with these animals every year, so it might be useful to have the old one recycled. That's like that's our prototype we built once, and we now have a content calendar, of course, to give there a more advanced input, and to also with knowing who is able to write something, because you have to manage all the journalists also in the newsroom. Where can you get something written? It's a big topic. You can also try to predict when you need an article like that, not in the way like week 20 is the peak, but you could also try something like this. So what you can see here is trends for last Christmas and gingerbread cookies. And you see this curve, and if you check what's below the curve, actually, you could calculate something like how much of the trend is gone in which week. And this is based on the previous year's data. And if I wait as a journalist to write the article about gingerbread cookies until the first week of December, I've missed 42% of the possible interest based on the data from the previous year. So it's really interesting for me as an SEO to tell them, hey guys, it's mid of October, let's plan to have something now about gingerbread cookies, because we don't want to miss the 42% of the possible interest, which is not because of the article is good or bad or something like that. It's just because people are interested way before, or some people are interested way before Christmas in Christmas cookies. So also something like this you can do with trends data, and then you get the idea, I think, with how you can get a good content calendar and how to improve the whole process of telling journalists when you could do what and so on. Okay, so that's it. So thanks.
Thank you, Tobias. It was great, really. I really enjoyed it, so I imagine everybody enjoyed it too. So many useful information. Yeah, it was excellent. Is it in? Yeah, she's there. Okay. So should we start the questions? Because some questions came in.
Yeah, have you already checked? I haven't checked, so.
Yeah, we've checked them in the meantime. But I let Iselin, there were three questions.
So, first question, if someone's using a CDN like Cloudflare or Akamai, does page speed matter?
If you're using a CDN, the main problem you solve is that it's never going down actually. So Akamai will probably never crash, even if you have high traffic. And the other thing a CDN is helping you is to spread your stuff through the world. So it's next to the client of the user. But this is just one part. It's like optimizing, like having compressed images. But if you're talking about the load order or the rendering in the browser, a CDN will not really help. You need to manage what is loaded at which point. And if you check in page speed, then you see there's something like render blocking resources, problems like that. Never possible. It's not possible to solve those with just having a CDN. So like, it's
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And can you tell us more about what you mean by recycle the articles?
Recycle the article would be if you have the Corona question example. So what's allowed at the German border related to Corona, then you have 10 rules, which are probably the rules at the German border. And then the German government is adding three new ones. Then you don't write a new article with having 13 rules, but you take the 10 rules and adapt them to now fit the new rules. And the same you could do with something like the nicest hiking tracks in Switzerland. You can check the upcoming year, you can check, okay, are these restaurants still there near the track? Which will be probably the case for almost all of them. And then you have a fresh article with updated information, which you can show the user again without writing a new one. So like, this is the idea. Yeah. Keeping your stuff up to date in the end. No.
Thank you. And we have another question here. So do you believe that Google is going to kill AMP next year? I mean, Q1 2020, I think you mean Q1 2021, Jakob, right?
Yeah, I think it was really early mentioned that it's happening early, this change. I don't, from a Google side, actually, AMP is not anymore Google. It's funded, I think, by Google still, but it's an open source now, and it's owned by some foundation, I think. So Google is not killing it, I think, but the question is how this will. Yeah, it's hard to predict what happens, but the new metric is good page experience. So not anymore having AMP or not having AMP. And if many publishers say we will go the hand-tuned side, then it's becoming hard for AMP, I guess. But I don't know. open.
The future will tell us. Let's meet in 6 months and see what happens.
Yeah.
Any other questions here?
So I have a question. As everybody asks a question, and we were speaking about AMP, so I will ask. So will Blick still keep AMP? Because you are quite fond of AMP, apparently. And you have obviously quite a bit of advantage with AMP. So I will try to be neutral. I like AMP, obviously, as everybody doing SEO. Almost everybody.
Of course, keep AMP. For us, we will keep AMP because we have developed it to a really good state, and we don't have so much effort to keep it. I think what we might try is to, let's see what happens with other publishers, but maybe we'll try to switch it off after a while or so. So that's a strategy you could go. So let's say you have an evergreen article, which would work all year. I don't know how to do something with finance or so. Then you might go with AMP for the news carousel, but after a while you may switch it off. That's what many publishers did. And have it then on the mobile side, because the mobile side is usually better for advertising revenue. So that will be kind of the discussion, I think. But there is also options if you check what the AMP Fest it was called this year. They offer something called AMP Bento. I haven't checked in detail, but as I understood, it's AMP components which you embed in your mobile site.
Okay.
So maybe we will mix up at some point. I don't know. So there are options to mix it up and to avoid to develop stuff twice.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
And we can take one last question here. In the page speed insights, is it better to focus on the largest potential saving item or the largest transfer size file? It depends.
Like largest potential saving in terms of seconds is probably more interesting. But actually, if you check page speed insights, I would try to go for what's reported as a problem with field data. Because if you are in a market with good network, then the transfer size might be less important. But if the important thing is actually the field data, not the lab data. The field data of real users which struggle with your site, and not like what you have in your lab, like in your lab test with page speed insights. I would check out the Chrome user experience report for that. They get a lot of information about what's field data problems.
All right. So time's up now. What I propose is I'll print screen the last questions and give it to Tobias, who will answer you people directly. Does that sound good? Or do you want to answer a few other questions now?
You can go on with questions. I have nothing.
Okay.
Corona, so.
So we have one. Tobias, what do you think about Google's news showcase? Will it change the possibility to be displayed in Discover?
News showcase? What's that?
Google News Showcase.
I'm not aware of that actually. It's possible for everyone to be in Discover. Also, as a blog, you can be in Discover. So
we have for the info. So it's paid content from publishers.
The thing in Germany, I have to read that. I'm not aware exactly what that is. I think, yeah, I've read something. I think Axel Springer is doing that. And yeah, currently we are not working on that because Blick is ad revenue based. We don't have a paid version, so I'm not so much into the paywall and paid game.
And we have one. No, I think we've answered all actually.
Last question,
right
cookies.
now, so.
Wait, there is a last question. Cookie policy pop-up impact the load of the homepage. Any proposal on how to solve that?
Yeah, I think Google bots don't need the cookie policy pop-up. And if you have an option, then I would not show it to Googlebot. I don't think that's cloaking or so. I think that's fine. It's the same with ads. Googlebot is not getting ads in the end. So you could try to detect Googlebot, or you could also do it with a language switch if you are in Switzerland. I don't know, sorry, no, I don't give legal advice here. But in theory, you could do something like switch it off for the US, and then Googlebot would be fine, something like that. But yeah, you have to clarify if it's okay, like with GDPR, I'm not so sure. But Googlebot, to not show it to Googlebot would be an option. Also, option is to go with some JavaScript. Don't load JavaScript if you detect it as a bot or so. I think then you're fine. Yeah.
Okay, so I think then we don't have any more questions. And thank you so much, Tobias, for answering all the questions. Guys, if you want to follow Tobias, you have the Twitter account here and the LinkedIn account. So Tobias Willmann, and I mean, for sure you can. I guess they can still ask him a question if ever.
Just write me. I try to answer. Yeah.
It's perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Tobias, for joining us. Iselin and I are very, very, very happy. It was fantastic. I hope then everybody have learned something about Publisher, especially if you don't work very often with Publisher, as for me, for example, about the tools and everything. So it was, yeah, it was great. It's the last second is always very difficult. Bye, Tobias. Bye, Iselin. And bye to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Wait, there is a question in the chat, but no, it's just a thank you. Okay.
It's just thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye, bye. Bye to everybody. Bye, bye.
Bye.